Yep.
So
So,
we're ready to go. All
so
right.
Brian's been here for almost 4 weeks already. It's gone very quickly. And so tonight Brian will kind of do a wrap up of talking about all the work he's been doing while he's here and tying in how modern art has influenced you, right? And then I hope we'll have a lot of time for questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really open that if we get partway through and your mind can't remember the question, maybe I can answer the question, and I just stop and answer the question, right? Because anyway, this is an introduction to basically modern history. As you can see, you know, a 16th century painting, you know, amidst the graffiti in the Bronx, all right? So somehow I got to take you from, you know, 400 years ago up to the present, okay? So this is a synopsis here, the two past and present, all right? So we start with Seurat, who's an impressionist, and this painting is unique because it's all made of primary colors. And it's what they call pointillism. So he was taking little dabs of color and juxtaposing that with the primaries. And the way the visual retina works is that it combines those primary colors to have a different chroma or a hue. All right, so we're starting with a representation. And the three things that help us to appreciate where modern art is basically there's three broad categories. There's representational art, symbolic art, and non-objective art. And so this would be more in the representational. It's an impressionist picture. And the impressionists basically, well, they didn't start the modern movement. The modern movement was before that. Some point it as far back as the French Revolution. But for our purposes, we're going to start with Impressionism, which was a break from traditional painting in that it was finding a new technique called pointillism. This is Kandinsky, early 19th century artist who is also a musician. And his objective, and this is where modernism started to take on new definitions. So his view was, as a musician, music is very abstract, all right? It's non-objective, there's no representation. It exists in the ear and the mind, and from that we make certain associations or images. Anyway, the mind is able to comprehend the emotions in music, but it is purely abstract. So Kandinsky was saying, well, okay, if that works for the auditory, is there some way of representing color and line and all the basic principles of art in a combined new way to bring about a visualization of similar emotions? So this was Kandinsky's way of doing it. And later on, what he did was he was trying to create a purity, almost like an ideal art, almost an art that would reach heavenward. And so these ideals that were perpetuating through his own emotions and intellect, he resolved it by straightening the line, finding geometrics, color, of course, and viewing it with a kind of a universal space. So no longer are we working with a Renaissance three-dimensional illusional space where you have foreground, middle ground, background. Now the space seems to be opened up so that you see through, and it almost goes towards almost like an infinity or an eternity. And again, using mostly primary colors. Henri Matisse, about the same period as Kandinsky, was looking at the picture plane in terms of color and simplifying. And so his notion of painting was about simplifying the picture plane. Again, he was about the joy of painting, getting down to the purity of painting. And I apologize for the slides. They don't represent the true colors, but very, very vibrant. And he was after simplicity as well. And so as you can see, it's no longer necessarily about subject matter or content. And what we're going to find out is basically painting became a content in itself without subject matter. The modern artist basically said, we've been a slave to nature for the last 1,000 years. Let's break free from that slavery and let's find new emotions and new way of representing who we are as human beings through a new visual language. And so what do you come down to? You come down to color, line, shape, mass, form, volume, and you deconstruct the reality and you move it now into a defining of a new space based on those principles of art. That's Mondrian, and he led a movement called neoplasticism. And you'll hear the word plastic a lot in the modern language. And basically, it's a move to those orientations of principles of color, line, and so on, which were considered plastic. Not that they're plastic, but it was a way of defining or separating it from the old genre of traditional painting. So I'm going to take you to another slide here. So that is his next move. So he's abstracted the picture plane. He's had it, it was more complicated. Now he's simplifying and he's moving towards a unity of the picture plane. He's moving towards a clearer vision, a unity, an intellectual unity, no emotion whatsoever. He could care less about emotion. So he basically has shifted and he's using more of a classical construct rather than a romantic construct. And then he finally comes to this, all right? So there was a progression where he was taking the tree from nature and moving it through abstraction so the tree no longer exists. And so this would be a case of non-objective. That is, the tree is gone, nature is gone, and the autonomy of the human mind to intellectualize the concepts of color and line into a uniform space, so that now this would be, in his terms, a perfect picture. But without subject matter.
Which he says humbly, right?
Sorry?
He says that humbly.
Humbly?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, most modern artists are very humble. Yeah, right. Hans Hofmann, again, he was a German painter who associated with Picasso, Matisse, all those guys. And because of the war, he came over into America, started his own school of painting. But his main theory was the push and pull of color. So warm colors come forward and the cooler colors recede backwards. So if you were looking at a realistic painting, what color are generally the mountains? Blue, because they're in the background, right? And usually greenery, pastures, whatever, in a realistic painting, they tend to come forward, all right? Your warm fields, your harvest fields, whatever. So they come forward. So they make a distinction in the plane from colors that recede and colors that proceed. Marc Chagall, again, now he was bringing into the picture plane something of what we would call the imaginative, and he was quite a colorful artist. But again, this would be a crossover between representational and symbolic. It's not non-objective because we can recognize certain objects within the picture plane. But he recombines it, and it's almost a fantasy world out of the dream world, which is a precursor to a movement we know now as surrealism. All right, Paul Klee, about the same time, he was exploring signs and symbols. You had, breakthroughs in psychology with Freud and Jung and all those guys, and they were breaking down conscious into unconscious and vice versa, ego, libido, all that kind of, Walter, you would know all that stuff. But basically, the world was opening up and closing down at the same time for a lot of the modern artists. They were getting frustrated because of the war and all the things that people were doing to one another, and they were basically just fed up. But they were also pushing into the unconscious, which was unheard of, in the 16th, 17th century. Painters, they weren't dealing with the unconscious. They weren't dealing with subconscious. They were dealing with rational content. They were dealing with social political things, and also on the practical level, most of them received their patronage through governments and churches, the church and government. And so they had to paint realistically because that's what the church wanted, that's what governments wanted, and that was understood as being the kind of painting that was useful. Well, when you come to the modern era, the whole question of painting as being useful, utilitarian, it had no basis, it had no meaning. And whoops, what did I do?
I don't know. Just go back into the folder called Brian.
What's that?
Just hit reopen on that.
Reopen?
Yeah. You just have to push down on the trackpad.
Do I hit return?
Nope. So you just have to tap.
Oh.
And then there you go.
All right.
If it stays.
All right. So again, we fractured the picture plane. So now this was another big part of modern art. Modern art basically said that a three-dimensional Renaissance perspective, where you had the foreground, middle ground, background, like you were looking through a window, that was all a lie. That was just an illusion. You can't have a three-dimensional on a two-dimensional surface, all right? You need to understand that a canvas is a two-dimensional surface. And to paint three-dimension on a two-dimensional is a lie. So a lot of them, what they did was they reoriented the picture plane, still creating a depth, but the depth was more shallow. It wasn't your illusory 3D perspective. Johnson Pollock. Okay, so moving now to exploring painting.
Brian.
Is that part of where Cubism comes
sorry.
from? Is that where Cubism comes from? Is that playing with the...
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Cubism basically is taking an object and walking around 360 degrees.
Yeah.
So breaking it apart and bringing it back together again.
Yeah.
And so then you get all the perspective, right? Which is quite disoriented to you, the viewer, because the back and the side and the front, all right? But the painter is trying to realize that an object true to form is, as I stand here, if you were a traditional representational painter, you could only paint this side as a full representation where there would be meaning in terms of, oh, it looks like you, all right? But the Cubist said, I don't care if it looks like you or not anymore, all right? And so he would paint here, and he'd paint here, and he'd paint here, and he'd paint here, and he'd paint here, here, and put it all together. Well, now for the viewer, well, I can't recognize that that's me. Doesn't matter, all right? It was more about the principle of being true to what the nature of reality was all about. And so a painting, if it's just from one point of view, may be representational, it may have meaning for you as one who views it, but modern art is basically saying, the viewer, who cares? I'm exploring the concept of truth and idea, and so on and so forth. So Jackson Pollock, basically an abstract expressionist, and so he's looking at painting as painting. And so the subject and content now is the painting itself. It's not about representation, it's not about representing something that's real or ordinary, it's about the paint itself. And so the subject matter of the 16th century was about content, and you could see the content, you could see what was going on, you could see the king slaying the sun or whatever, all right? But when you come into the modern era, those kinds of constructs don't work anymore. And so now it's beyond just being retinal, all right? That is, all my understanding of meaning comes through the retina, and then goes to my brain, and my brain interprets the meaning of the object. Now it's a visual experience in which the inner soul, the unconscious, the things where on an atomic level, the 16th century didn't have any understanding of. We have an understanding now, you know, with theory of relativity, Freud with his breakthrough. Yeah, I mean, these new revelations about the nature of the world, and now we're moving into quantum physics, and who understands that? And who understands antimatter and all those kind of things. But these are concepts that are making our natural world far more complex. And so the visual artist is now dealing with these realities that a Renaissance painter never had any clue or understanding about. Franz Klein, another abstraction expressionist, so basically he may have taken a line from Rembrandt and all he did was enlarge it. Like these canvases would be 15 feet long, right? And it was more about the gesture. Again, it's about the paint, it's about the gesture, it's about the, you know, the construction of the painting. It's not about the content of the painting, it's about the construction. All right, William de Kooning, again, here's an artist, abstract expressionist, where he's painting the human figure. And for a time, the human figure got lost altogether in the first part of the century. All right, the human figure was no longer necessary in order to examine what painting was all about. But the human figure has never been lost to modern art. It's just been submerged and it's reappeared. In the case of de Kooning, it's fragmented. But he's, again, interested in the motion of painting and then some color and some line. Deaconborn, he's out of the California school, de Kooning was out of the New York school, but you can see his construction was totally different than de Kooning's. De Kooning's was wild and, you know, frenzied. Not Deaconborn, very structured, very ordered, architectural. And again, you know, the color is layered so that it's not just a flat color, it's color that comes through color. Helen Frankenthaler, again, she's of the period where she painted on unprimed canvases, which at that time was no-no, you know, so she was breaking some rules herself. And if you understand, the modern era was about breaking rules all the time, coming up with new innovations, not staying with the tried and true, not staying necessary traditional, opening up the picture plane, the experience of the unconscious, the experience of emotions, the experience of purity, all those kind of things were having an impact on what the artist chose as his or her subject. Mark Rothko, again, these are large paintings. These are paintings that you actually enter into. So they're not paintings this size, they're 3 times the size of this. And it's about embracing the space, the universal space. So what Mark Rothko was interested in was the universality of experience and trying to identify with some mythic and primitive sources of our unconscious. Some people believe that unconscious is a learned language unconsciously, but we pick up signs and symbols along the way and we enter into a more universal comprehension of the human condition and experience. And so some people, there's a whole chapel where he has all the paintings around, and people come in there and they have a spiritual experience, not a religious experience, but a spiritual experience. And some have been, you know, brought to tears just being in the presence of these paintings. Mark Tobey, similar to Jackson Pollock, but this is, instead of splattering the paint, it's all controlled. It's like a calligraphy. It's all hand done, all right, layers upon layers. And then Frank Stella, all right, again, these are large paintings, basically optical effects, all right. Tom Hodge and I studied under at OCAD. again, you know, redefining the picture space. Walter Bashinsky, again, a Canadian artist who is also an instructor of mine. This is a pastel work. Many of the students got involved in pastels this past weekend. All right, so now this is my stuff. All right, so I just wanted to give you a quick survey so you have some concepts to work with, okay? So this is part of the existential selfies that I'm showing down in Kitchener. So I don't have them all represented here, but I just wanted to walk you through so you had some sort of comprehension. So these are all self-portraits, okay? As messed up as they are, okay? So I have photographed myself in these different states, okay?
Are these
Looks
all
like the
part-
Statue of Liberty, doesn't it? No, I'm kidding.
Brian,
Yes.
are these all part of the show that's in Kitchener?
Yes. Of the times and how they were going through changes themselves personally, through moods in these horrific environments. And so I use color, I use line, I use shape, I use those things as the language of the visual arts to communicate something deeper beyond just line and plane. And like I said, some of those lines were purely just lines, right? They were to capture, yes, I can draw, yes, I can paint, yes, I can do these things, but not for the sake of those things. Am I going to just rest with those things? They have to be retranslated into some human meaning.
Well said.
Well said.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
One, have you done an artist in residency anywhere else
No.
before?
No.
So
That's because I probably should market it more.
So I was wondering if being here influenced what you were doing and how so.
Oh, you mean?
While you were here, what you were working on. Did it-
Well,
was there
I mean,
any,
like I
like-
said, I started with this one back here, so even before any real community effectiveness.
Yeah.
And I just thought, you know, I'd do something for the students. And again, don't take this offensively, but it's a sign of our times. I mean, I would say, I mean, we're all vain. All right, we all have those aspects where we want to look good in public, you know, not our worst, always our best. And the mirror is so much part of our social conditioning psychologically, how we look at ourselves. And people who say, well, I never use the mirror. Okay, well then, you know, you have a confidence that you don't need a reinforcement. You don't need something that you see yourself and say, oh yeah, eyeliner's looking good today, and you know, hair's good, and my teeth are brushed, right? That's not important to you, all right? But for the youth culture, the selfies, the mirrors, anything that reflects that self-image is so very, it's a part of their identity.
Mm-hmm.
And this was kind of like a pun, you know, the broken mirror, the broken identity. We're all broken, right? We look in the mirror, even though we think we're whole. There are parts of us that are broken, right? Parts of us that don't line up to what we think they should be, right? And so we're always caught in this, I gotta improve myself, self-improvement programs. I mean, our culture is so full of self-help, self-promotion, right? Gotta get better, gotta get better, gotta get better, be successful, all those kind of things. Those pressures, all right, us older generation, you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I think that's because we're in a very broken
Sorry?
society. I think it's because we're in a very broken society right now, and we're moving farther and farther away from community and from, in general, This is a, wait a second.
Well, yeah, part and parcel is due to the Enlightenment, Renaissance, Enlightenment, humanism, you know, that whole divorcing ourselves from any reliance or need for God, right? Where we become independently, you know, looking after ourselves and looking at the world through our own man-centered eyes. Well, when those kind of divorcements begin to occur logically in the thinking, not only of a person but a culture, a community, it can only lead to separation because identity is tied to individualism, and individualism is very rampant in our society today. And living in a unique situation like this, where you're learning to share and learning to commune and learning to converse and learning what unity means in a diversity of many plurality of views, ideas, is essential. And one of the things I think that breaks God's heart is the fact that the church is so fragmented and disunited. I mean, his prayer in John 17 was that the body of Christ would be united, and that there would be a wholeness, and it would be a reflection truly of Christ. It would demonstrate more than our words what it really means to be in community and in Christ. And so you have a microcosm here that's very, very essential, unique, empowering, and I think it's what makes SSU, you know, different from most cultures out there. And when you have disagreements, how you work out those conflicts, all right? Again, it comes down to you have a commitment to one another and personal responsibility to maintain, you know, your identity, your unique identities in a diversity, but unified community. And so unity and diversity it's happening, right? And only the church up there could come to the same realization that whatever denomination we are, you know, doesn't really matter about the emphasis I place on certain doctrines and the de-emphasis you place on the same doctrine. That doesn't really matter so much. Doesn't mean that I have to abandon mine to become like you. It just means that we appreciate and respect those different values and emphasis, which brings an orchestration of the magnitude of the beauty and of everything that God has created in his good time and order.
Very eloquent.
And I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. It has been good for my spirit. I've missed my wife deeply, and but it has been very enriching for me. And even though at times at the lunches and the suppers, the boisterous loud, you know, it's just like my brain, I walk out of there and I go, oh, solitude, solitude. And sometimes I've even had to unplug. No one would know. So when you're seeing me sitting there with a smile on my face, it's because I unplugged. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. So this is just a little gift
Oh,
for you.
chocolate?
You know what? I bought some, but it's for your wife. You can't eat it all.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much. Oh, wow.
A lot of people who you've affected in the last 4 weeks have written little things, and I'd love to read a few.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
they really show what you have given in the last 4 weeks. So you've opened my eyes to a whole new view of art and what it means to be an artist. You inspire me. God bless you on your future endeavors. Brian, thank you so much for taking time out to come and share your art with us and teach us how to produce it ourselves. You have taught me how to loosen up and how to be
Freer.
freer. Good.
There you go.
Freer with my own art making. Won't forget your triangles.
Oh.
Very insightful. I hope you can come again and help inspire future students too. God bless you and all the best. There's some other ones. Brian, thank you so much for your amazing teaching and wonderful conversations. It would be wonderful to come visit you when I'm back in Ontario.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you've really inspired so many people, and you've been so generous, Brian.
Wow.
Just sharing all your experience and taking time to be
Yeah,
here
yeah.
with us. So God bless you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Agnes. Thank you for.